Mason and his girlfriend, Amy, were in a private jet. They were invited to a private jet auction event by the richest person in the city. Arriving there, Mason and Amy were pleased to drink first because the event would be held a few hours later. When they were getting their drinks, they were greeted by two bartenders, and one of them said that he liked rich people. Not long after that, an old man approached Mason and Amy, and the man was the host of the auction. And yes, this old man was the richest man in the city. The old man explained that the auction would be held in 2 hours, so he hoped that Mason and his girlfriend would be patiently waiting. Mason happily answered that he and his girlfriend will definitely be waiting, but Mason also said that he had heard that the old man collects very rare luxury cars. The old man really liked to show off, so he immediately took Mason and Amy to his luxury car garage. At the garage, the old man explained one by one his luxury cars, which were very rare and expensive. After that, he showed them the most expensive car, and it was worth $20 million. No wonder all rich people definitely wanted that car, but the old man wouldn't sell it now. Mason asked if he and his girlfriend could get into the car, wanting to feel the adrenaline. The old man happily allowed it, even telling Mason to start the car's engine. However, when Mason and Amy were inside the car, Mason immediately asked his fellow hacker to turn off the system in the garage. Not long after, Mason's other friends immediately surrounded the garage, because it turned out that Mason and his group were a group of skilled robbers who had been targeting the car from the start. After they had run quite far, Mason immediately put the luxury car in a boxcar, so their mission completed as planned. On the way, Mason and his friends were very happy because the robbery was their last before retiring, and everything went well that day. But a few moments after that, they were suddenly chased by the FBI. Mason was very confused about why the FBI knew about their plan, and at the same time, Amy pointed a gun at Mason. Turns out Amy, who dated Mason for 2 years, is a member of the FBI. She was deliberately sent to trap Mason and his group. Mason just found out about this, and he was very offended. Moreover, he really loved Amy, so in the end, Mason asked his group to do Plan B, jumping into the water and trying to escape by swimming. Shortly, Mason and all his friends managed to escape because they're pretending to drown in the lake. Meanwhile, Amy returned to the FBI. 3 months later, Mason was still sad after Amy betrayed him. A friend of his, Sean, came over to him. Sean is Mason's younger brother, and he was also part of the robbery group. Sean suddenly said that he had a plan to do a mission again, and their next target was a bank. Hearing this, Mason refused because he no longer wanted to deal with the police or FBI. Sean tried to convince Mason several times, because Mason was their leader, but he still refused. Sean then explained that he didn't want Mason to go down like now after Amy had betrayed him. That's why Sean was sure that Mason would be enthusiastic again if they do their previous job. However, because Mason stayed firm in his stance, Sean finally just gave him a cell phone, hoping that Mason will soon change his mind. A few days later, Mason was suddenly called by his fellow hacker, asking him why he had not yet come to the crime scene. It turned out that Sean admitted to all his colleagues that Mason would also take part in the robbery. He knew that his younger brother was a careless person, so in the end he was forced to take part in the robbery. On the other hand, a bank manager was having a coffee during his break. At the same time, Sean appeared and came after, asking for the manager's finger. Of course, the manager looked confused and he thought Sean was joking. But when Sean showed a gun, the manager realized that Sean wanted to rob the bank. When Sean was about to lead the manager in, Mason appeared and reminded Sean to stop all this, but Sean said that he couldn't because everything had already happened. In the end, Mason gave in and went in first. Inside the bank, Mason's colleagues had gathered, preparing to take action. When the bank manager arrived and was about to open the safe, he actually pressed the alarm button, which made the security guards react. Everyone there was controlled by Mason's group. Meanwhile, a shot grazed Sean's arm. Mason told the hacker to immediately control the system inside the bank, then he and Sean went inside. There, Mason asked Sean about what exactly they were going to rob. Sean told him that they would take a crypto wallet like a flash disk worth millions of dollars. With the hacker's help, they managed to open a locker belonging to their target, but when they checked it, the flash drive was not there, and Sean didn't know the other locker's passwords. Mason was a little bit annoyed with his younger brother for always being careless and didn't take everything into account. Mason asked about the owner of the flash disk, and Sean answered that it belonged to a socialite named Isabelle Farreau. Mason asked the bank manager about Isabelle's safe, but the manager swore that he didn't know, because there are thousands of safes in this bank, so the only person who knew was probably Isabelle herself. At the same time, the police started arriving to surround the bank. The FBI also came, and the group was led by Amy. After that, Amy got into the container car because that's where she will negotiate with the robbers. The FBI team has prepared a sniper who is ready to shoot according to Amy's directions, while the hacker asked Mason to come because someone would make a negotiation with him. Mason immediately came, and he asked Sean to keep an eye on the bank manager. When Mason arrived at the hacker's room, he found out that the person calling him was Amy. Here, the two of them were awkward, but Mason realized that Amy had only come to catch him and his group. Mason asked the FBI to retreat 50 feet, and if that wasn't done, then Mason would definitely finish off the hostages. Amy immediately came out to look around, wondering why Mason wanted her team to retreat 50 feet. It wasn't a suspicious request, so Amy and his team finally complied with Mason's request. After that, Mason proposed his second request to send boxes of pizza and drinks, because his group and the hostages were very hungry, hadn't had time to eat lunch. Amy agreed to this request, but on the condition that Mason had to let the two hostages go if his request had been granted. Mason agreed, but he wanted Amy to deliver the pizza. While waiting for the pizza, Mason told his colleague to take the hostages to her room because the food would soon arrive. After that, Amy came with the pizza, and here was where the two of them met again after the incident 3 months ago. Amy asked Mason to just give up and let go of the people, but Mason refused because he and his group didn't come here to surrender. Mason then went into her room where his colleagues distributed the food for the hostages. Mason kept his words. He released 2 people according to his agreement with Amy. Shortly, the hacker and Mason had found the safe password belonging to Isabel, and they immediately told Sean to check it. But unfortunately, Sean was careless, up to the point that the bank manager took Sean's gun, attacked him, and then tried to escape. Mason then entered the locker room, asked Sean to quickly chase the bank manager. Finally, Mason managed to catch the manager, then took him to the hacker's room. The bank manager finally told them that Isabel Farrow's safe was somewhere in his secret room. However, Mason and the others have to know that Isabel Farrow is the mistress of a conglomerate named Abel Salazar, and the safe actually belonged to him. The manager said that Mason must definitely know who Abel Salazar it is. Turns out, Abel Salazar was the most influential person in the world, and he's one of the richest people. Even the government really respected him. In the safe they were up to, there was all the evidence of the corrupt official's crime, which was entrusted to Salazar. Sooner or later, Salazar would definitely send troops to stop them, without caring about the hostages. Knowing all this, Mason panicked because it would be difficult for them to get out safely. But Mason finally decided to stick to their plan, taking Salazar's safe. At the same time, a minister and several of his subordinates came. The minister, Abel Salazar's right-hand man, asked Amy why the FBI didn't immediately go inside and finish off the robbers. Amy said that they were thinking about the hostages, and so far, the group of robbers were still willing to negotiate. The minister said that in 1 hour, exactly at 6 p.m., if Amy and her team had not yet knocked out the robbers, then he would deploy the CIA agents. Amy felt something was strange, so she contacted her boss, asking why the minister looked like he was hiding something. Moreover, the minister would also deploy the CIA tactical troops at 6 p.m. Amy's boss finally told her that the minister was a messenger from Abel Salazar, the most influential person in America. Abel Salazar reportedly has all the evidence of crimes by corrupt officials or elites stored in the bank. Hearing this, Amy asked her boss to keep the FBI in handling this robbery case because there were still many people inside. But Amy's boss said that the FBI couldn't do anything because the CIA leader who would be in charge tonight was a corrupt official ordered by Abel Salazar. On the other hand, Mason, Sean, and the bank manager had now found a wall leading to the safe. They destroyed the wall without hesitation. After that, they went inside and found a brick wall, and they had to destroy it again. While the hostages were still worried, they hoped they could be saved immediately. Thanks to the hacker, Sean and Mason were directed to a place, and again, they had to destroy the third wall. Unfortunately, behind the wall, there was a steel plate, so it would take quite a long time to break it. At the same time, the CIA were heading towards the crime scene. Not long after, Amy called Mason's personal number and asked for him to quickly free the hostages. Amy still cared about Mason, so she begged Mason and his group to just surrender because the CIA tactical troops would not hesitate to finish off Mason's group. Amy also explained about Abel Salazar's safe, but Mason knew about it as well. Before hanging up the phone, Mason asked Amy to invite media journalists so that the CIA didn't do anything arbitrarily. Moreover, inside the bank, they still have a lot of hostages. Shortly, the corrupt leader of the CIA and two of his subordinates met Amy. He asked Amy to resign because now the operations would be taken over by the CIA. Meanwhile, the CIA tactical team were starting to approach the bank and would immediately enter after receiving instructions. The CIA leader contacted Mason, threatening him that if he didn't surrender in 15 minutes, then his troops would blow up the entire bank, especially since he didn't care about the hostages. Hearing this, Mason casually explained that the CIA leader had to see the news because the media journalists had already gathered in front of the bank. This made the CIA leader unable to do anything because there were still many hostages in the bank. Annoyed, the leader asked Mason to surrender in 15 minutes, otherwise his troops would rush into the bank and finish off Mason and his group. Meanwhile, Sean managed to break through the third wall, and at the same time, Mason arrived and they finally managed to get a drive belonging to Abel Salazar. To open the access, Mason asked the hacker to break into the system as quickly as possible. But the hacker said that it would take her around 10 minutes. But unfortunately, in 8 minutes, the CIA team would immediately rush in. On the other hand, the hostages were freed one by one so that the CIA didn't get in. Meanwhile, the hacker continued to try to access the hard disk. Sean led the bank manager and told him to leave as their last hostage. After that, the robbers came out one by one. One robber came out, followed by another. After 2 robbers surrendered, it was Sean's turn, and before he came out, Sean apologized to his older brother because he often acted carelessly. While Mason and the hacker chose to stay inside, making the CIA leader angry, then asked his troops to immediately rush in. He suspected that Mason was planning something that he didn't know yet. After the tactical team rushed in, they were able to capture Mason and the hacker. But Mason held a bomb trigger while asking for the minister, Abel Salazar's right-hand man, to come to see him. If his request was refused, Mason was ready to detonate the bomb, which would surely kill everyone inside, including himself. A few moments later, an explosion occurred, which meant that Mason and the hacker chose to blow himself up with the CIA tactical troops. 1 week after the incident, Amy chose to retire from the FBI on the grounds that there were so many corrupt people in the government. The next day, Amy went to a luxury hotel on the beach, and Mason was already waiting for her. It was revealed that from the start, Mason and Amy had planned all of this from the beginning, where Amy and Mason failed to rob a luxury car, to Amy pretending to betray Mason. It showed how Mason was able to survive the incident that night. Turns out, when Mason asked the minister to come, he was already there. Mason threatened the minister, saying that he and the hacker had uploaded all the crimes of corrupt officials, including Abel Salazar's crimes. If the minister didn't want all the crimes to be published, then he had to send $10 million to each member of Mason's group. Mason also asked the minister to send $1 million for each person he was holding hostage before, including the bank manager. Finally, Mason asked the minister to release all his members who had been arrested and create new identities for him and his group. On orders from Abel Salazar, the minister immediately agreed to Mason's request. Then Mason pretended to die in this incident by exploding the bomb. Now Amy and Mason were together again, and at the same time, Sean appeared from the swimming pool, saying that now, it's time for them to enjoy their retirement.